Hello, I'm Courtney Carr, Director of Marketing and Education for IAPD. Thank you for joining today's e-training webinar, Reach What You Need to Know, presented by Johannes Mohs of Rochling Engineered Plastics. During the presentation, you may submit questions into the Questions tab on your webinar toolbar, and we will answer them at the conclusion of the presentation. Following the webinar, you will receive a link to a survey. Once you have completed the survey, there will be a link to download the presentation slides. You will also receive a recording of today's webinar. Feel free to share the recording and slides with others in your office. Johannes Mohs is the head of quality management and the industrial division of Rochling Group in Germany. Mr. Mohs has been with Rochling Engineered Plastics since April of 1992. I would now like to turn the presentation over to Johannes.
Okay, thank you very much. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Our target for today is to learn a little bit about the European regulation REACH. And at first, I want to say something about general information, principle, objectives, the scope of the REACH regulation, and then especially Article 1, communication in the supply chain. What's really important, it's Article 33, and the global harmonized system. You have heard that my name is Johannes Mohs, and responsible for the Rochling Industrial Group, and the scope of our company is the development, manufacturing, machining, and sales of engineered plastics. That means we produce semi-finished products like sheets, rods, and tubes from thermoplastics and composite material. So now we start with general information. I don't know exactly whatever you heard from REACH. REACH, it's a really tough issue and really complicated with a lot of legal requirements, and that means REACH registration, evaluation, authorization, and restriction of chemicals. And this union regulation is dated from the 18th December 2006. That means really old, and come into force at the 1st of June 2007. And this regulation is equally and directly valid in all member states of the European Union. That means not only Germany, in each member states of the European Union. At the first thing is to check if you heard a little bit from REACH, the determination of concern. That means, what function do you have? Are you manufacturer of chemicals or substances? Or if you importers of chemicals, if you only representatives of chemicals or substances, or are you distributors? Or the last and the really best one, and also I explain a little bit more about that, the downstream users. And I don't know exactly if you have some question about the only representative. That means companies based outside the European can appoint a European-based only representative to take over the task and responsibilities of importers for complying with REACH. This can simplify access to the European market for their products, secure the supply, and reduce the responsibilities for importers. And only representatives have to be a natural person or legal entity established physically in the European Union, equipped with sufficient knowledge in the practical handling of the substances and information related to them, appointed by a mutual agreement with the manufacturer, formulator, or article producer established outside the European Union. That means it's a really complicated point what's for the requirements of only representatives. Some really important task is the substances. What means it? Substances is a chemical element and its components in the natural state. The second one you have to know is what is a mixture. Mixture means a solution composed of minimum 2 or more different substances. And really important also to know what is an article. An article for the REACH regulation. That means an object which during production is given a special shape, surface, or design which determines its function to a greater degree than does its chemical composition. That means the chemical composition is in the background of this kind of product or goods. The ECHA is the European Chemical Agency, and all information we will have, that means the regulations, the guidelines, the publications, it's from the ECHA. And the ECHA is based in Helsinki in Finland, and also the ECHA published guidelines to explain more in detail than me the REACH requirements and support practical implementation. Also, they are responsible for chemical database, listing substances, registration number, and deadline also for the registration of the different kind of chemicals or substances. Further, they manage the registration, evaluation, authorization, and restriction processes for chemical substances to ensure consistency across the European Union. Some examples for publications are practical guides, practical examples for registration, but that's a really important point, guidance documents, or one of them is a guidance on information, requirements, and chemical safety assessment. This means this guidance describes the information requirements under REACH with regard to substance properties, exposure use, and risk management measures in the context of the chemical safety assessment. And you see a lot of dry stuff you heard now. The principle of REACH is based for the industry ownership. That means no data, no market. Shifting responsibility for the safe handling of chemicals to the industry. And safe handling means from the manufacturer to the end user. Further, it requires industry to be responsible for the safe manufacture and use of chemical substances. That means manufacturers, importers must evaluate and register all the substances by the ECHA in Finland. Awareness of substances of very high concern, that's a special list, and now approximately 200 different substances are on this list, and normally twice a year, they gave new lists to all the industries and downstream users. And restriction of chemicals posing unacceptable risks. The next point I want to show you are the objectives. Ensure a high level of protection of human health and the environment, as well as the free movement of substances on their own, in mixtures and in articles. Mixtures, you know, it's a composition of more than one, that means two or more different substances. And in articles, that means articles, sheets, rods, machine goods, and so on, while enhancing competitiveness and innovation. The regulation addresses the production and use of chemical substances and their potential impacts on both human health and the environment. That means this is a regulation to save the environment, and also for a really useful handling and working with substances, chemicals, and articles and mixtures. I think you have heard about material safety data sheets, and this is also the part of them, the material safety data sheets, in which you can see also the handling and to working with that, what kind of material is in, what you have to do in case of fire, in case of accidents, and so on. But the character of REACH is the following. First, environmental protection. Second, environment-related public health. Third, worker protection. Fourth, work-related public health and consumer protection. That means legal obligation for importers, producers, and supplier of the product. And in the scope, you can see the requires all companies manufacturing or importers chemical substances into the European Union with more than 1 ton per year to register the substances. You can see a short flow what they have to do. Phase 1 started at the 1st December 2010, phase 2 2013, and phase 3 end of May 2018. That means pre-registration phase and substances registered over 1,000 tons per year. The second phase is registered substances over 100 tons, and the last one is registered substances over 1 ton per year. That means all the big manufacturer and producer should register all phase-in substances end of December 2010, and smaller producers or manufacturers of chemicals, of substances, it's a first, they ended at the 1st June of 2013, and the smaller one was the end at 13 May of 2018. And now to one big article of the REACH regulation. This regulation is based on the principle that it is for manufacturers, importers, and downstream users to ensure that they manufacture, place on the market, or use such substances that do not adversely affect human health and or the environment. Its provisions are underpinned by the precautionary principle. A big part of the REACH regulation is the communication in the supply chain. And what you can see on the screen is it started every time by the manufacturer. They have to give all information to the importers or to the only representatives. That means what is really in. Is it a dangerous product? Is it a not so dangerous product? Is it correct labeled? In which way they have to label it? Are there some forbidden or requisite substances inside? And then it goes to the distributors, and at the end to the downstream users and also to the consumers. And the REACH regulation will that all information, all communication goes through these different steps from the manufacturer up to the consumers. And it's not nice to hear this. It is a must. The manufacturer must inform the importers. The importers must inform the distributors. And also the distributors must inform the downstream users. As an example, if in this articles or in the substances, one of the substances is which is part of the SVHC, that means substances of very high concern, then they have to give this information like as a CAS number or the article name or the substances name to the next step if there is material inside over 0.1% in the product. And now to the responsibilities of downstream users. I told you at the beginning that we are producer from semi-finished products. That means we produce articles from thermoplastic and composites. That means we handle with substances, we handle with chemicals, and also in our semi-finished products, we have products from manufacturer of chemicals. And we got from each of them a material safety data sheet. And this is also a must to have. That means receiving an extended safety data sheet for a substance or mixture. And we have to check if this is really correct. Is it in the new form? For the old material safety data sheets, they had a special old European regulation, and now in the title or on the document must be information that this is in accordance to the REACH regulations, that it's a really must. And also that the new symbols of the global harmonized system must be in. We from Harden, as a producer from semi-finished products, we produce no material safety data sheets. We produce a so-called product handling information sheet for the safe use of articles. And why we do this? Because if we also create material safety data sheet, we suggest that our article is dangerous and must be registered by the ECHA. And that's not correct. We learned that an article, the function of the article has a more important point as the chemical substances. That means we have to create only product handling information sheets. Otherwise, we suggest that it's a chemical or a dangerous substance. And I told you something about the substances of very high concern. That means substances such as carcinogenic, mutagenic, and reproductive toxic substances and endocrine disruptors. And the authorization process aims to ensure that substances of very high concern are progressively replaced by less dangerous substances or technologies where technically and economically feasibility alternatives are available. And now we have approximately, or we have really 197 substances on the SVHC candidate list. You can see the status from February 2019. As an example, on this list you can see lead diphenylate phthalate, that means DPP, and other dangerous substances. And the route to authorization starts when a member state of the ECHA, at the request of the Commission, propose a substance to be identified as a very high concern component. These substances will be following hazard properties, may be identified as SVHC, substances meeting the criteria for classification as carcinogenic, mutagenic, and reproductive toxic for the category 1A or 1B in accordance with the CLP regulation. Further, substances which are persistent, bioaccumulative, and toxic, or very persistent and very bioaccumulative according to the REACH Annex 13. Substances on a case-by-case basis that cause an equivalent level of concern as CMR or PBT substances. And normally the SVHC list will be updated twice a year, normally once at the beginning of the year and the second one in the middle of the year, that means June or July. Responsibility for the product containing of this candidate list is, at first we need an identification in the material safety data sheet. That means the chemical name, information on safe use, communication obligations to customers within 45 days. That says the Article 33. And also, if one end consumer comes to you and asks you what kind of substances is in, then it is a must to answer and to give this information to the customer within 45 days. And notification obligations to the ECHA and authorization required to continue using. What's that? some information obligations. Information is the supply chain. I told you something about the supply chain. One is the requirement for safety data sheets. This is in Article 31. Requirements for substances and mixtures without a material safety data sheet, part of the Article 32, and requirements for substances and articles within supply chain, part of the Article 33. And the Article 33 is the communication in the supply chain, and they say information about substances with an proposition by weight of more than 0.1% or more. And the second one, information must be provided within 40 days. And the last obligation is to retain information for 10 years or more. A second time, Article 33, duty to communicate information on substances and articles, and after a substance has been included in the candidate list, suppliers of articles containing a substance in a concentration above 0.1% by mass shall provide sufficient information. What is sufficient information? It could be that you say, okay, how safe you have to handle with this article, or say them only the name of the substance, which is in a higher concentration of the allowed 0.1%. The regulation don't say, you have to say really this or that or that. You have to give information to the next step, and also to the customers, and also to the end users. And I told you a little bit about the GHS, the new symbolic of the REACH regulation, and this is the CLP regulation. That means classification, labeling, and packaging. And this has also EU regulation number. That's 1272 from 2008. And this comes into force at the 20th of January 2009. And here you can see the new labels, and each substance or each critical or dangerous product must be labeled with one of these label in accordance to the CLP regulation. And if you want to know what this all means, we created also a special letter for this, and a special information. And there you can read what it means, the fire symbol, or this human symbol, that means danger. And manufacturers, importers, or downstream users have to classify and label hazard substances and also mixtures to ensure a high level of protection of human health and the environment. For hazards of highest concern and for other substances on a case-by-case basis, classification and labeling should be harmonized throughout the European Union to ensure an adequate risk management. It means all these labels should also be used in the US and other states. And the summary is registration, evaluation, authorization, and restriction of chemicals. Principle, no data, no market. And what's really important is, I go back in my presentation. Is a communication in the supply chain. This is really important, that you are able to give the correct information in form of product handling information sheets, in form of other letters for all dangerous components which are in the chemical or in the article, and that you can give also by questions of the consumers or end users which kind of dangerous product is part of the article or the chemical or substances or in the mixture. As an example, if you print something on a glasses, and in this ink it could be a dangerous substances, and if the end user asks you what kind of dangerous substances are in the ink, then you have to give them in a time scale of 45 days the correct answers. Now you heard a lot of, what means lot of, a short point of the EU regulation, and we only can give you a minimum and information what it is, the REACH regulation. And what is really important is the communication about the supply chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johannes. As a reminder, please submit any questions using your webinar toolbar. If your questions are really in-depth, please feel free to contact Johannes directly. His information is located on the screen. So we will give it another minute or so as people type their questions. While you are typing, I will remind you that next Friday we have a webinar on PAEK, the characteristics, properties, and applications. So we hope you will join us for that as well. Give it another 20 seconds for questions.
No questions?
No questions. Okay, this concludes our presentation. As a reminder, you will receive a survey about today's presentation. Once you complete the survey, there will be a link to download the presentation slides. In a separate email, you will also receive a recording of today's webinar. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you once again to our presenter, Johannes. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much. And enjoy the day.